Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. And everyone, welcome into the program. I hope that you're doing well and you are ready for today's show. Because today on the program, we have, of course, Ralph Bond. He joins us every single Friday. And, we kind of tussled with this one behind the scenes on if we dedicate more time to CES or if we have Ralph back on. And honestly, he pulled through and he actually has some CES coverage here with us. So very happy about that and very appreciative. Now, with that being said, computeramerica.com, when it's live and alive, that's where you're going to find everything, including past shows, future shows, show notes, articles, all that and more, and of course, our CES coverage. We have a lot of articles, kind of behind the scenes. We have a lot of interviews lined up, and ladies and gentlemen, you're going to want to keep an eye on that. We're experiencing a little bit of technical difficulties as, honestly, the biggest week in tech, that you expect nothing less. So there you go. With that being said, check that out. But of course, social media links, turns out YouTube and our social media links and our podcasting services are much more stable than our website seems to be. So if you want to check out any of that, feel free to. It should be up and running. And obviously, hey, you found us somewhere, so you are listening to it. With that being said, why don't we go ahead and bring on our guest? And of course, Ralph Bond, he has our science and technology trends, and you're going to find out real quick what that means with a number of stories that he's put together, and we're very, very happy to have him back on. Ralph, how you doing? Welcome back onto the program.
Hey, it's great to be back. And CES it's morphed into this kind of general overall, not only consumer electronics, but even science and technology advancements that are kind of outside of the realm of what you'd walk into your local Best Buy and purchase off the shelf. So to me, having been in this business for so many decades and seeing CES evolve, it's fascinating to me. It's like I say, it's become more than it used to be. It used to be kind of like, imagine a gigantic Best Buy store from around the world showcasing, no, it's that, but much more. And again, go ahead, Ben.
And it's just to highlight how far-reaching CES has kind of become. Like you kind of walk, especially like the main hall, and you have John Deere tractor next to Rivian trucks, which is like electric vehicles, next to NASA, next to Girl Scout, next to the U.S. Postal Service. Like it's a very hodgepodge, and technology really does bleed into everything.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And by the way, before we jump into all of this stuff, real quick for our listeners and viewers, if you're new, welcome. What we do every Friday, Ben and I try to leave you feeling better about the world, uplifted about where we're going with science and technology and how it's working to give us solutions. So if you're looking for depressing news about the Middle East or anything, no, you've come to the wrong place. This is where you're going to leave feeling better about yourself and the world. And what we also do is we look at all kinds of things: robotics, medical technology, sustainable energy technology, transportation advances, space research, physics, you name it, across the board. And that also is going to be reflected in the three little things that caught my eye at this year's Consumer Electronics Show.
Perfect. Yeah. And, you, of course, picked three very different stories than what I think has been covered by a lot of outlets, because we've been kind of keeping track of that. We've been doing the virtual conference. We didn't decide to go in person this year, and I told you I had some some words about CES kind of before we got started. And I have to say that CES this year is almost like it's almost in a shadow, Ralph, that ChatGPT and AI and all the implications of that. Like obviously Microsoft has invested, billions of dollars, and, every other major company is investing hundreds of millions or, however much they can into this. And Ralph, it seems like we've been hearing about AI almost daily. It's,
Yeah.
you know, and when it comes to CES, normally there's like a headline. There's something that really catches people's eye. You know, it could be the, you know, let's say it's like a 140-inch Samsung TV, or it could be, you know, just something from the show that really gets people attention. Like that's where self-driving cars were first debuted, were at a CES event. This year, Ralph, it's like, nothing's really standing out because we've heard so much about technology and so much about AI. And a lot of the innovation that we're seeing is, oh, you have an e-scooter that has AI. You have a car that has an AI DJ. You have, you know, you have a pet door with AI in it, so it can identify if your cat is holding a mouse, and it won't let the cat in as long as it's still holding the mouse in its mouth. And by the way, that is a real product. You know, it's like every product that I'm seeing there is, oh, how do we cram AI into this? Because that's what people want to see, apparently. Like, there's always a trend, Ralph, be it Internet of Things, be it wireless, be it so on and so forth. This year is AI, and we've already heard so much about AI in the last year. CES seems like it's so overshadowed this year, and that's not normally the case.
Yeah, no, that's a very good observation. You're so right. I would say in the world of volume of news, at least in our part of the earth, it's either stories about former President Donald Trump, and then right behind that would be AI.
Yeah.
In terms of volume of coverage.
There's not much room to breathe really between those two topics, and CES is, and it's like, I don't know, there is cool stuff to see, and if you're out there looking for it, and you know, we're going to bring you some of our articles, and we're going to have companies on. But Ralph, like, this is the first year that, you know, ever since COVID, we've like, we were there and we caught COVID the first year that there was COVID, and then ever since then we've been doing virtual. Next year we're definitely, like, we're 100% going to CES. As long as they have a CES,
there you go.
We're 100% going to CES. So,
cool.
You know, be on the lookout for that. But this is like the first year, Ralph, that I'm like, I wish I was there, because I feel like the coolest products and the coolest stories are going to be those lesser known companies, because everyone who's getting headlines is, oh, I put AI into a little rolling robot, or I put AI into, and I kid you not, I put AI into toilets. Stuff like that is getting the headlines, and that doesn't excite me anymore. AI just, like, I get it, it's going to change things. It doesn't excite me, and other stories are going to excite me, and I wish I was there to find them. But you have found, and let's go ahead and segue this, you have found a number of stories. I'm not saying they can't be AI related, but you found 3 science and technology stories from CES that really caught your attention. So this is a great way to kind of move in. And actually, you know, of course, looking at story number 2, I have one very similar from a Dutch company. Wait, is this your... I'm sorry, your third product from your CES lineup.
Right.
I found a Dutch company that does the exact same thing. So that's definitely a trend. So let's go ahead and just get started to get people introduced to our show.
And by the way, folks, be sure to come out to computeramerica.com when the website's alive and well again, and get what we call the show notes. The show notes will give you sort of the script of what we're going to talk about, because we gather articles, we just do the highlight points, but we embed all kinds of links and images and all that good stuff. So if you're listening to us as a podcast and you want to dive deeper and see what we're talking about, then come out to computeramerica.com, go to the Ralph Bond tab at the top, click, and you'll be able to access the show notes. So with that said, let's jump into this. So there were 3 things that kind of caught my eye trolling the news coverage of CES this past week. And the first one comes from, and this is kind of a selfish, local, regional thing for me. I live in the Portland, Oregon area. What I'm talking about is a news story from the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory in Washington State, just up the road. I like to call them the MIT of the Northwest, because these people are amazing. If you don't know about them, learn about them. In the show notes, we have links, of course, and they published a whole thing of all the stuff they were doing at the Consumer Electronics Show. And this goes back to our point about how CES has morphed into something much more than things you buy at Best Buy, because these these guys are pure research people. So anyway, what they did is the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, which is part of the U.S. Department of Energy, this week showcased technology and software available for licensing as part of the Department of Energy Office of Technology Transitions booth, there's a mouthful, at the 2024 CES this week. Now, some, not just the only, but some of the technology highlighted included an instrument developed at the lab that is more sensitive than a dog's nose and identifies explosives and narcotics vapors in real time at levels previously undetectable by other conventional sampling technologies. There's a video link in the show notes. You can check this out. And to put this into perspective, I think we all have heard the statistics about how much more your dog can smell things than we can. But just to remind you, and I love this factoid, dogs have a much more powerful sense of smell than humans. Yes, we know that. Well, humans have about 5 million olfactory receptors. I'm surprised we have that many. Dogs, get this. So we have 5 million, which is very impressive, but dogs have between 125 to 300 million receptors. What? Wow. This means that dogs can smell things that are much fainter than humans can. For example, I love this. For example, dogs can smell a single drop of perfume in an entire swimming pool. Oh my gosh. Wow.
Whenever the dog sense of smell comes up, I always have to say that, remember, it's not intensity. It's not like they smell that perfume stronger than anyone else. It's more of a wide thing. They smell everything and also whatever it is you're trying to catch.
Good point. Very good point. Yeah.
So don't worry about, freaking your dog out because you cook very badly and the whole place smells like bad food. Don't worry. The dog smells that, but they also smell other things. So don't worry about that.
Yeah. Well, you make a really good point. They smell a spectrum of things in that swimming pool, using that swimming pool example. But what you do, and you know this, Ben, the authorities, the security people would train, the military security, Homeland Security, whoever, would train the dog to be rewarded if they smell that perfume, right? So that's what's going on. Yes, they smell the spectrum, but they'll
trained
bark or
to
they'll
smell
do something
that small part.
to say, I have also detected this drop of perfume in this huge pool.
Definitely.
That one blew my mind.
Yeah, and always comparing it to dogs, like it's really amazing what nature has kind of set up for us, but for technology to kind of catch up. It's one thing to have a dog kind of roaming around an airport, but to have these sensors, kind of everywhere, have like that burst of air where when you're going through the sensors at the airport and being able to detect that, that's going to be really, life-saving, I think, in a lot of cases. So there you go. That's your first story. Your second story from CES, also very cool.
Yeah. And by the way, what we're doing is 3 things from CES, kind of very quick highlights, and then we'll get into our more traditional stories coming up in a moment here. This next headline, Science and Technology Directorate of the Department of Homeland Security showcased a variety of programs and technologies at CES. Homeland Security had a little booth and display at CES. Wow. Okay, there's a great link, though, showing you what they were doing. And here it is. So at this week's CES, the Science and Technology Directorate of the Department of Homeland Security highlighted its Silicon Valley Innovation Program. I didn't know they had this, which bridges the technology development gap between the Department of Homeland Security, startups, and small businesses. So they're coordinating this kind of synthesis or this coming together of these resources from the Silicon Valley, which I think is fascinating. Just one of the innovative companies or technologies highlighted included something called My Language. So run those 2 words together with the My, lowercase m, y, and then uppercase L language. Okay, My Language, and fascinating stuff. So My Language is a mobile language translation company developing technology that enables people to have a fluent spoken conversation with someone who speaks a different language. And I'm sure you're thinking, well, we've seen that a lot. I've got it on my smartphone. I can say, hello, how are you? And it comes out in Spanish. No, here's the deal. The difference is this works without requiring an internet connection. That's significant.
Yeah.
And they are currently working to enable the U.S. Coast Guard personnel to communicate in real time, rapidly, and effectively with non-English speakers and those who are unable to communicate verbally. So again, I'm just giving you a little taste. Get to the show notes, dive deeper if you want to learn more about this and this My Language technology, which once again doesn't need an internet connection.
Yeah, it's something that's deceptively tricky, because we've seen language translators for 15, 20 years now at this point. They had language translators for a long time, but I will say that there's a difference in just translating word by word, which is what a lot of old translators do. Is just they go from my name is Ben, and then me, I'm S Ben, which is not very fluent. It's very kind of structured and one-to-one. But to be able to take the sentence, flip it around, and then put it back in a dialect or a dialogue that's more natural, that's something that's only been done with computers and internet, and something that's gonna bridge that gap a lot better if you go somewhere that you don't speak the language. So I like this one a lot, and of course,
it's very cool.
And thank you for turning us on to the the fact that really think about the Department of Homeland Security, and you think well, they should be running drills and they should be kind of policing what they do here. No, they obviously have a lot of different initiatives going that help them in their work, of course, but will affect us in many different ways. So very cool there at CES, and really highlights how different the vendors there are, because not all vendors are trying to sell you a new phone. A lot of them are just showing off what they're doing. So very cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And then Ben, the third story from CES this week, you mentioned you saw another company with a very similar device.
Yeah.
The headline here is Crowdfunded, which I thought was kind of interesting. Crowdfunded hiking exoskeleton debuted this week at CES. Got this from GlobalData via the Microsoft News Network outlet. And we've got a link and a picture. And I'll try to, for people listening on the podcast, try to describe this. Imagine a kind of waist belt and a device that comes from the back and goes down to two attachments to your legs, just
two
above the
straps around
knee.
Your thighs.
Right, exactly right. And we've got a video and the show notes that you can see and all that good stuff. So here's the story. Shanghai-based exoskeleton company Hypershell debuted its new exoskeleton product this week at CES. The company's exoskeleton product, touted as smart and lightweight, and it does look like it would be pretty lightweight, caters to the needs of outdoor enthusiasts requiring additional support or those carrying heavy loads. And I'll have more to say about that in just a moment. The wearable device offers a 25 kilometer battery range, or 15.5 mile battery range, a maximum speed of 20 kilometers per hour, or 12.4 miles per hour, and the ability to offset 30 kilograms of weight, that would be 66 pounds, through its 1 horsepower mechanism. And here you go, 14 artificial intelligence sensors adapting to the user's movements.
AI and everything, I promise you.
There you go. Equipped with an AI-based motion engine, the exoskeleton adapts to the user's movements, providing assistance with a maximum power of 800 watts. Now, they talk about this for hiking and outdoor enthusiasts. Wait a minute. What about oldsters like me that could use a little extra boost when I'm out there trying to keep up with my grandkids, right? I mean, I think this has real applications beyond what they're showing here in the video, which is a guy out hiking in the wilderness, which is all well and good. But I truly think there's a lot of therapeutic or assistive therapy possibilities for this product. And you mentioned you saw another similar product.
The similar product, and we're going to mention. We also have a show planned. It's not going to be with Computer America. Well, I'm going to be on one of our other correspondent shows, and I'm going to be on there talking about that on Sunday. But hopefully by Monday or Tuesday I'll be up. This one, if you're watching the video portion, is WI Robotics, and they made it We Innovate Mobility WIM. And this is more what you're kind of talking about, Ralph, because you can see here, kind of folks just going for a nice leisurely walk. The apparatus looks more like a almost like a leather satchel kind of thing, and it's not as like rugged or intense, although they show people kind of running with it and stuff like that, but it's more like stylized, I guess you would say.
Ben, in the show notes, why don't you edit them to embed a link right there in that story and say, here's another similar product, and just put that link in there, because I think our viewers and listeners would get a kick out of that.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
This one isn't.
I think it's great.
Yeah. This one isn't as powerful. The one that you found, 66 pounds. That's really, something incredible. This one is more, like 20% of the walking energy. So like, maybe 10, 15 pounds, much lighter, but obviously it's probably going to be more affordable and much more accessible. So just something that, and like you're saying, I'm dealing with this with Craig, just like, not that walking is impossible, but obviously it takes it out of you. So, something that can just give you a little bit more range, can kind of let you engage with your family, just a little bit more.
Absolutely.
Stuff like that,
Very cool.
And, this one coming out later this month. So you don't have to wait that long. So
good stuff.
Very cool product, and a lot of people should kind of take notice. Yeah. The one thing I did kind of take issue with the story that you had, and then we'll move on to story number 2, is that they had IP rating 54, which sounded a bit low to me. They show this part here, right here, where this gentleman, and they're showing like kind of the maneuverability, like even though it's essentially strapped around your legs and you're like, oh no, what if I start running off in a direction and I can't stop it? Like Hulk, and you start busting through walls. Well, they're showing the agility of this by this gentleman, kind of stepping over these rocks and, going over like a little creek or whatever. Ralph, IP54 means limited dust ingress, so you can't fall in the dirt with this thing, or else it might damage it. And it can light jets of water jets from multiple directions. If this gentleman fell into the water with this product, it would no longer work, and he's risking it all, just for the shot.
Well, yeah, and Ben, that's a good point. Real quick before we move on, that brings me back to, all well and good to emphasize this or promote this for outdoor enthusiasts. How about urban environments to help people who need assistance in mobility? That's where I think
it would be much safer, especially with just an IP rating of 54. This might like if you fell in the mud, this thing would be toast. Yeah. So there
you go.
Something a bit more user-friendly would make more sense. But still, both products that are going to be out and you can get them, and hey, again, shows a trend. So not surprised at all. Okay, so there's our CES stuff. Yep, and thank you so much for covering that. Really helps us out with our CES coverage. And ladies and gentlemen, the next couple of stories aren't CES focused, but
that's right.
If you want to find out more, computeramerica.com. And in the meantime, Ralph, let's go ahead.
Okay, nuclear energy. All right. It's so interesting to me, Ben, that we see a resurgence of interest in this as a help for dealing with climate change and getting off of fossil fuels. Okay, with that said, here's the headline. eVince, eVince microreactor boasts 8 years plus of nuclear power without using water. Not only is it a fascinating innovation because this is a reactor that doesn't need water for cooling and so forth, but its size, it's one of these micro reactors. We're going to learn about this. This story comes from Interesting Engineering. We've got a link and a video, of course, and this is coming out of Westinghouse. So a side note, what are microreactors? A nuclear microreactor is a type of nuclear reactor, that is designed to generate electricity on a smaller scale than traditional nuclear reactors, the big facilities, the big plants we usually think of. And they are 100 to 1,000 times smaller than conventional nuclear reactors. So picture it's a miniature reactor. And we've got a nice link to the Department of Energy's discussion about this in Wikipedia and so forth in the show notes. Okay, so here we go. A new microreactor, eVince, eVinci, it's like a play on the word Da Vinci, right? Developed by Westinghouse, has an amazing feature. It can function without water, paving the way for nuclear power to reach far-off locations where water might be scarce. The first such microreactor will come up in Saskatchewan, Canada by the end of this decade. So we're talking about early twinkle of the eye, early stages of this, okay? Because it's not going to have its first installation until the end of this decade. So that's a good example of the trends thing we try to do. So unlike Nuclear power plants, which often take years to build and become operational, microreactors offer a rapid way to transport and set up a power plant using nuclear fuel. As the name suggests, a microreactor is small enough to fit in a transport truck or aircraft and can be quickly moved to a place in need of electricity. Whoa, wait a minute. Think about disaster zones and so forth where they're in, or think about poor, the folks in Gaza right now. Wow. However, most microreactor designs still require water either to convey heat from the core to steam turbines or remove excess heat. eVince's unique attribute is that it does not use water at all in its operation, as we've stressed a couple of times already. Westinghouse claims to have achieved this using heat pipe technology, which decreases the number of components needed in active systems. Recently, the team manufactured its first ever 12-foot or 3.6 meters long nuclear-grade heat pipe, which eliminates the risks from high pressure or cooling leak incidents seen in other designs, the company said on its webpage. The company also uses a passive heat removal system, which deploys radiation and convection modes of heat transfer to remove heat from the reactor core without any need for operator intervention. No need for operator intervention. Wow. The heat removed from the reactor can be used either for district heating or for industrial applications, depending on the environment it is operating in. Westinghouse uses TRISO fuel. That's tri-structural isotopic particle fuel. Boy, if I could say it, I could be in better shape here. Tri-structural isotropic particle fuel. In the eVince, which is more resistant to incidents of corrosion, oxidation, and high temperatures than traditional nuclear fuels. The microreactor does not require refueling and can work for more than 8 years, producing 5 megawatts of energy while reducing 55,000 tons of CO2 per year. Then, if you want to come to the show notes, you can learn more about what is this TRISO fuel stuff. I got a little more details here for you. And let's go on, though. Once the fuel is exhausted, the microreactor can be hauled away for disposal and another one plugged into its place to continue operations on site. Kind of think of it like replacing a battery.
Yeah.
Earlier in November of this year, so this article was written late last year, so we're talking about November of 2023, the Saskatchewan Research Council approved a CAD, a grant of $80 million, that would be US $59 million, project to build the first such microreactor in Canada. The facility is expected to be operational by 2029, so just before the end of this current decade. But microreactors, Ben, I didn't know anything about this, and wow.
Yeah.
And especially one that doesn't need water.
The water one is such a because so much of like building a nuclear reactor are the concerns about water, because you need so much of it to run one of these things, that they're not as they're more environmentally friendly, but they still require heaps of water that you have to get from somewhere and turn into steam. This whole project and being able to, like I said, no water, transfer the heat, and like they're not even thinking of the heat as like a useless byproduct. Like they're thinking of how do we get it to somewhere useful, and you can think of like let's say like an Arctic climate, and obviously Canada, there's plenty of those. Being able to use that heat in people's homes and just have it piped directly in, and then of course your waste becomes something useful to people, and that's something that all of this is really amazing. And like you said, after 8 years, they just haul it away and just put in a new one. So, almost limited downtime. And I'm sure they're not just going to crumple it up and throw it in a landfill somewhere. No. They're probably going to recycle it, break it down, and all that good stuff. So, very cool.
It's a very interesting, very fun.
And Westinghouse, of all people. Yeah.
I know. And a whole new world for me. It's fascinating, I think. Well, anyway, here we go. Next story. Next up, I love this headline because there's a word in this headline that just made me go, okay, why would you use this word? But here it is. The headline is, a British startup plotting to make computer chips in space. It comes from the Telegraph, of course, a British outlet. And I just think that when someone says plotting, I think of someone deviously behind the curtain thinking about, I'm going to kill this guy.
They saw, and for all of our long-term listeners, Ralph has a long history with Intel, who of course makes plenty of chips. And I'm sure, Ralph, with your background, you're like, computer chips are hard enough to make as it is. Like, it's an expensive process to begin with. Plotting might be the right word, because the British are like, how can we make this even more expensive? And the answer is to do it in space. That's the only answer.
Well, there's a real interesting motivation behind this. So here we go. Here's the story. Making computer chips from materials forged in space may sound like an idea from a science fiction novel, but a British company is hoping to make it a reality. And you might be saying, why? Things are expensive enough as is, to your point, Ben. But here we go. Space Forge, that's the name of the company, plans to send small washing machine-sized modules into low or Earth orbit, about 500 to 800 kilometers, or that would be up to 497 miles above the surface of the Earth, where gravity is low, of course, but retrieval is within reach. Low gravity means the raw materials for semiconductor computer chips can be made more easily. That's the key. A gentleman by the name of Josh Western, Space Forge's founder, says, quote, a combination of the microgravity and the vacuum you find in space allows you to create incredibly pure crystal structures. Space effectively allows crystals to bond better with less contaminants. To your point, Ben, I could ride my bike to one of the huge foundries and manufacturing facilities for Intel here in Hillsboro, Oregon. And about people have to bunny suit. They have to go through all kinds of things. You have to have this incredibly pure environment. This is sort of related to saying, hey, there's another way maybe we could go. While most chips are made of silicon, Space Forge is exploring the use of alternative materials such as gallium nitride. The full chip won't be made in space, just the raw material. So this is something you need to understand. They're not talking about making the entire chip up there. They're talking about making contributive raw materials, but making them in an environment where it's much easier to do it and gives you benefits as well. So higher crystal purity means chips will produce less waste heat, which could save millions of dollars when operated, and the amount of energy used could be slashed by up to 60% compared to doing it on Earth. The Space Forge team hopes the technology will lead to significant savings for applications such as 5G phone masts, radar, and electric car charging. So there's a whole range of things where they think this could help contribute. And this company's space labs, these little washing machine sized things, can be launched by rockets such as those operated by Elon Musk's SpaceX. And once the process of forming the crystals is complete, the aim is for the module to be returned to Earth like Mary Poppins with a deployable umbrella to slow its reentry. I think they're talking about a parachute, but okay, I'll go with the Mary Poppins thing. And a little reality check. There is a little reality check that's noted in the article. The cost will be significant, to your point, Ben, but the final price will depend on the complexity of the chip materials, how long the module stays in space, and how many microchips a customer wants. And once a batch of chips have been made in space, and they're talking about contributive materials, the material can be used to seed cheaper manufacturing processes on Earth. This lowers the cost of production dramatically while retaining most of the benefits. So it's just a very, you can see why it caught my eye, the idea of this world, doing this production in space, out of this world.
and that's low-hanging fruit. But I got to say that I guess that they're saying, and think about these chip manufacturing plants. There's only so many of them in Southeast Asia. There's only a few of them. Intel's the only one doing it here in the United States. Really, Intel's the only one doing it outside of Southeast Asia. Like if it's not Japan, Taiwan, or or South Korea, it's really not happening anywhere else. And I guess what they're saying, Ralph, is that it costs a lot of money to do it on Earth anyways. So maybe if you have a little bit more cost and do it in space, because hey, you get all those benefits that you would have here on Earth, but for cheaper. Maybe you can then send it back and make chips here on Earth. It's ambitious. It's different. I've never heard of something like this before. So thank you for introducing that. Is it viable? I mean, who knows? But still, very, very different. So I like that.
Yeah.
So story number
different.
Story number 4.
Yes, story number 4. What Ben and I like to do, if you're new to our show, on Fridays when we do these science and technology trends, I always like to try to end the show with something from the medical technology world or something medically related, because I've been such a petri dish of all kinds of procedures and operations myself that I relate to this very well. So here we go. Researchers developed sustainable wound dressing hydrogel based on seaweed and carbonated water. So we're not talking about exotic ingredients here. Seaweed and carbonated water. That immediately caught my eye. I said, I've got to learn more. This comes from PHYS, short for physics.org. Really cool story. You got to check it out. The links are in the show notes. Again, folks, come out to computeramerica.com and get the show notes, get the links. Here we go. Over the past few decades, hydrogels have received a lot of attention for treating skin wounds. That's so true, Ben. We've covered this before with other attempts, or other technologies, rather. When applied over a lesion, these special gels can promote healing by absorbing discharged fluids and keeping the wound protected, well hydrated, and oxygenated. So that's the plus of hydrogels. But here we go. However, most developed hydrogels that we have now are given adhesive properties to skin tissue to follow skin movement. So they are made to be adhesive so that as you move your body, it doesn't break apart or disintegrate. Since these hydrogels are sticky and adhere to the skin and wound site, they stretch and expand the wound itself once they swell up after absorbing fluids. So that's the problem. As much as it's great to have the protection, the movement causes them to expand the wound, which kind of, defeats the purpose in a way. This not only causes pain to the user, but also puts them at a higher risk of bacterial infection due to the wound area expansion. So that's the problem. All right. With this, keep this in mind now. Against this backdrop, or rather with this in mind, a team of researchers from Tokyo University of Science in Japan have now proposed an innovative and highly value-added medical material for treating skin wounds. As reported in their recent study published in the International Journal of Biological Macromolecules, they developed a novel, low-cost hydrogel using a component found in seaweed, achieving physical properties utterly different from conventional hydrogels. The method of preparation of this proposed hydrogel, so we're talking about early research here, folks. The method of preparation for the proposed hydrogel is quite straightforward. It was made using alginate, calcium carbonate, and carbonated water. Alginate is a biocompatible substance that can be extracted from beach cast seaweed. They mean seaweed that's washed up on the shore. Most importantly, it does not adhere strongly to cells or skin tissues thanks to the special structure formed by alginate and calcium ions, in addition to protective effect of the CO2 in carbonated water against acidification. The resulting hydrogel not only exhibited ideal pH and moisture conditions for wound recovery, but also demonstrated significantly lower adhesion and swelling compared to other commercial hydrogel wound dressings. So you can move around with this unique hydrogel, and it doesn't do that expansion bit of the wound that was the problem with all hydrogels to date. So this is some really promising advancements in this area of wound treatment.
So this is, kind of strikes me as well because, Computer America started in South Florida. I'm from South Florida. Our beaches are, kind of one of the cool things about Florida. And they have beach cast seaweed, also called sargassum, in many places. And it's usually seen as like, Ralph, it's almost like a nuisance. Like, it's not that it's bad. It's naturally occurring. It's going to happen more with climate change and things heating up, and these seaweed patches are going to expand. Again, it's not strictly garbage, but it's not really doing much, and it kind of makes the beaches ugly. There's plenty of seaweed out in the ocean that's very, very useful, but not so much up on the beach. And you look at these pictures. If you're watching the video portion, like, there's a lot of this stuff. Like, here's a picture from one of the Central Florida beaches. Like, Ralph, if you're able to kind of pick this up and blend it into something and, with very basic ingredients, calcium carbonate and carbonated water, and turn that into bandages, that's almost like taking a waste product and turning it into something very, very, very useful and life-saving, such as these bandages.
Yes.
So very cool. Again, almost turning like a negative into a positive.
There you go.
Very, very cool. So story number 4, and that's, story number 4, but also you had 3 at the beginning. So more than usual. And Ralph, I want to thank you so much for that.
Yes.
Also, there at the end, if you check out the show notes and there's a little bit more and you're like, what is all this? Well, these are stories, not that they aren't cool, but we only have time for so much. So Ralph, if you just want to go over real quickly the honorable mentions.
Yeah, real quick. And again, all the links are in the show notes. Come out to computeramerica.com, go to the Ralph Bond tab, get the show notes. You can dive into this if you want, but I'm just going to give you the headlines. So the first honorable mention, the headline is Stretchable E-Skin for Robotic Prosthetics. And this comes from medgadget.com. It's a big innovation in that field, and I love that kind of stuff. And then here we go. Amazon plans to make its own hydrogen to power vehicles, such as forklifts and so forth, in their massive warehouses. It's just kind of an interesting little nugget there. It's a good indication of the trend for hydrogen as well. And then the last one here, let's see. I love this one, guys. You've got to check this out. Headline, Evolution is not as random as previously thought, finds a new study. This also comes from phys.org. And of course, all my life, it was about Darwinism and about, random accidents of mutation, and that mutated entity happened to survive better than its comrades. And so therefore it got to go on and reproduce the classics, right? The classics. They're saying, time out. We're starting to find out maybe that's not quite exactly what's going on. It's not as random as previously thought, as the headline says. That's a must read.
Yeah.
And there it is for this week's honorable mentions.
Very, very cool. Yeah. And I'm sure that every night those birds just thought, if my beak was just a little bit longer, and, their kids woke up with a little bit longer beaks. I'm sure that's what
Lamarckian.
Must have been. So with that being said, Ralph, I want to thank you again for coming on, and we'll catch you here next Friday. Ladies and gentlemen out there, it's been a busy week with CES. This is the first CES that I can think of that had 4 days of it. Normally it's 3 days with like a pre-show. This is 4 straight days with a pre-show. So everyone, I want to thank you so much. And for tuning in, and be sure to be on the lookout. We have a lot of emails to get through and a lot of shows to kind of set up. But everyone, computeramerica.com when it's alive again. And you can, of course, find us on all of the podcasting sites, YouTube, and more. So until next time, have a great day. Thank you so much. Catch you next time. Bye, everyone.